Right, I'm still feeling really unwell again this week, so a bit of a temperature, neck ache, headache, bit of a sniffle, and I've never felt so tired in my life. I did actually contemplate taking this week off, but I know I would just get bored and regret it. Besides, you'd all miss me terribly. And over the weekend, my attention was drawn to something, one of my pet subjects, tyre pressures. I've touched on this subject a couple of times over the last 3 years, and I remember one of those videos when I was doing a bit of research into it. The figures were something like 70 to 80% of car tyres on the road are underinflated. That's quite a scary figure. And I know bikers are just as bad. There's two people I can think of that are close to me that never check the bike's tyre pressures. In fact, I think the only times the pressures actually get checked are probably when the bikes are serviced or, you know, when it physically looks flat. Now, about 5 years ago, one of these friends, he owns a GS 1200 BMW, he was complaining that he only gets about 1900 to 2000 miles out of a rear tyre, which I at the time thought was odd because I had the adventure version of the GS, which is heavier. And although it was showing signs of wear, my rear tyre had done well over 5000 miles and it was fine. Now, I suspected that low tyre pressures were the problem, but he was having none of it. It's not like he was riding excessively, you know, he was doing about 4,000 miles a year and going through 2 new rear tyres at £200 a tyre. And eventually he was so incensed by this issue that he wrote to, I think it was Michelin, who were the makers of the tyre that he was using. Now, they got the dealer that had sold him the tyre to remove this latest defective tyre from his bike. He fitted a new one. The old tyre was sent to the manufacturer and they came back with an email saying you've been riding your bike with the tyre underinflated. Now, they went into all sort of technical jargon as to how they could tell that this tyre had worn prematurely due to underinflation. And to be fair, the tyre was a mess, it was shredded. But ironically, he still wouldn't have it. He accepted that the tyre had been underinflated, but he wouldn't accept that the excessive wear had been caused by underinflation. Now, in the position that I'm in with this channel, I have people contacting me all the time about handling problems with the bike tramlining excessively and it didn't do it when they first got it, excessive wear. And I would say 9 times out of 10, these issues can be attributed to the fact that the tyre is either underinflated or it's been underinflated previously and that's caused damage to the tyre, it's caused it to wear abnormally. That basically comes down to neglect, the fact that we should all be checking and inflating our tyres on a regular basis, at least weekly, only inflating them if it's necessary, of course. But the other side of this is something that I'm sure you will all have seen on the forums and on the Facebook pages from time to time. These big debates over comfort on the bikes and tyres, etc, etc. Where some people openly advocate dropping the pressure in the tyres below that's specified by the manufacturer in order to enhance comfort on the bike. I mean, you couldn't make it up. Now, the manufacturer of every bike and every tyre gives you the recommended specifications for the pressure of your tyres, whether it be on a car, a bike, or whatever. And they don't just pluck that figure out of thin air. You know, they come up with those values for a reason. It's a balance between longevity of the tyre, safety, and handling. You know, basically, if your bike is acting strangely on the road, the first thing you need to look at is your tyre pressures. Now, as I said at the beginning of this video, there was something that came to my attention that prompted me to make this video. If you remember, I made this sort of global warming confusion video a couple of weeks ago. Well, who could forget it, really? And because I've been doing a lot of research into the subject, obviously all your feeds start to sort of funnel related information your way. And actually, it was a subject I'd never heard of before. I'd never even considered it. And I promise you, I am not just making this up. And that is the subject of tyre wear pollution. Now, I think what's prompted this to sort of come to the forefront again, because apparently we've known about it for some time, although I'd never heard of it before, is the announcement of zero emissions vehicles, electric vehicles, by 2030. I know they're saying 2035 at the moment, but if you look at what the government's saying and what various environmental agencies are saying, they're all using the date 2030, not 2035. So I think, the current deadline that we're being given is going to change. And the general consensus that seems to be going around is that because electric vehicles are heavier compared to internal combustion engine vehicles, they are actually going to make the environmental problem, worse, not better. Now, to be honest, I haven't been able to sort of make the facts and figures add up to what some people are saying, because some of the predictions are that the pollution caused by tyre and brake wear on vehicles is 1,000 times worse than engine emissions. When you look at the actual figures that have been stated, it doesn't add up to that, nowhere near that. And perhaps those figures will make more sense in the fullness of time as we hear more about it, because I'm sure we are going to. The rest of it, however, does make perfect sense. When you think about it, every time you push your foot on the brake, every time you basically move in a motor vehicle, your tyres and your brakes are wearing down. And if they're wearing down, that material that's been worn away has to go somewhere. Where does it go? Well, the answer is apparently into our waterways, and then into our oceans, and up into the air, into our atmosphere. And this is further exacerbated that as we wear our tyres down, we're also wearing down the road surface. Modern tyres are made from synthetic rubber. Our road surfaces are made from tarmac, which uses tar. And guess what? They're both technically fossil fuels. The heat produced as these surfaces wear produce volatile aromatics, which are not only extremely poisonous, but also contribute to global warming. Now, apparently this problem has steadily been getting worse over the last decade or so, with much larger volumes of heavy goods vehicles on the road, and the trend for large, heavy SUVs. Now, I did watch one podcast which even suggested that the advent of ABS and traction control have contributed to this, which again does make sense. In the past, before we had these facilities, we would be more careful when we were accelerating, and we would be more careful when we were braking, because we didn't want to overwhelm the traction on the tyres. But now we have that sort of safety net of those two facilities. People tend to accelerate harder and brake later and harder. And in both cases, traction control and ABS don't activate until the tyre starts to lose traction, which means it's creating more wear than before. Now, this is being billed as the next big sort of project for governments. As I've said, the amount of batteries that electric vehicles need to carry make them much heavier than an equivalent petrol engine vehicle. And you also have to take into account the phenomenal torque that these electric motors produce, which means that traction control is going to be coming into play much more often. And as I've said, there are some agencies predicting that electric vehicles are going to make pollution worse. They're not zero emissions vehicles. And the concept of non-engine emissions has now been born. Now, proponents of the electric vehicles have already come forward to try and sort of counter this by saying that when you take your foot off the accelerator in an electrical vehicle, it slows down, so there's less need to use the brake. But I think that actually happens with petrol vehicles as well. I'm not quite sure just how stupid they think the general public is. At the end of the day, I think it's the tyre industry in general that's going to have to find the answers to this. They do already have technology to make tyres which wear much slower and are less toxic, because apparently the plastic that is used in the manufacture of automotive tyres is very nasty, poisonous stuff. It's also non-biodegradable, and as we all know, we've all seen this footage and pictures of plastics that are contaminating our oceans. Apparently 28% of microplastics found in ocean organisms is now attributed to vehicle tyre wear. Coincidentally, have you ever wondered what happens to tyres when we, take them off our vehicles and throw them away? Apparently, it used to be a major issue getting rid of used tyres, but they discovered they have a very high calorific value. So the most common way of disposing of used tyres is to grind them up and use them for generating electricity, presumably to power our new electric vehicles. Now, tyre manufacturers are not going to want to start making tyres that last longer and wear less, because that means they're going to sell less tyres. So I do believe it's going to take some sort of legislation to force the issue, but until then there are things we can do to minimise the damage that we seem to be causing no matter what we do. First of all, check your tyre pressures regularly, at least once a week, and ensure that your tyres on your car and your bike are maintained at the correct pressures. Also, avoid driving practices which will activate your ABS and your traction control. Keep your acceleration under control and try to avoid heavy braking if you can. Look further ahead, and when you see a possible sort of hazard on the road ahead of you, shut your throttle off and coast rather than wait until the last minute and then braking hard. It's all pretty simple advice really that will save you money. It may even save your life, but more importantly, it might just help save our planet. Believe me, we're going to hear a lot more about this phenomenon in the future. You heard it here first. Once again, thank you so much for watching this video and helping to support this channel. I really do appreciate the time that you put aside each week. If you have enjoyed this video or found it useful, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. If you are subscribed, don't forget to hit the bell button so that you're notified whenever I release a new upload. If you didn't like this video, please leave a dislike, because apparently YouTube doesn't care and it will still push the ratings of the video up. I will of course be back on Friday, so until then, ride and drive safely, and I'll see you soon.